Today, we're taking on a relationship that is, well, it's vital, it's tense, and it is incredibly lucrative. We're talking about the complex and really the highly personalized bond between the U.S. administration and Saudi Arabia. And this isn't about some abstract foreign policy. It's about dollars and deep access. Our focus is on how this immense corporate influence, these massive financial deals, have actually shaped high-stakes policy decisions, specifically things concerning, sensitive nuclear technology. We're basically doing an archaeological dig through some high-level documents here. We've gone through key excerpts from a July 2019 U.S. House Oversight Committee report. And this report, it's built on over 60,000 pages of documents. We're going to contrast all that historical lobbying with some very recent reporting on current diplomacy in this case. This celebrity soft power game. It's a huge stack of sources, and they all point to one thing: a deep transactional core.
They absolutely do. And what's so fascinating here is the central tension that these documents reveal from that 2017 to 2019 period. You see how core U.S. national security policy, and we're talking specifically about nuclear nonproliferation standards, how it collided just head on with these immense corporate and foreign financial interests. The policies designed to keep the world safe were treated by some people as just commercial obstacles. And the crucial takeaway for you, the listener, is how this dynamic, this deeply personalized and transactional approach, it hasn't gone away. It just keeps manifesting in current diplomacy, where everything seems to be about securing the deal or the investment or maybe the personal endorsement.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to unpack the extraordinary, really detailed strategy that corporate entities use to penetrate and influence the U.S. government, all to secure multi-billion-dollar nuclear deals and, effectively circumventing all the traditional policy channels. Then we're going to pivot. We're going to compare that historical effort to what we're seeing now, these highly visible instances of soft power, celebrity diplomacy, and ask how the currency of influence has changed. Let's start with the highest stakes item first: nuclear technology and the threat of proliferation.
Right. Any transfer of U.S. nuclear technology to a foreign country is governed by really strict rules. It's under Section 123 of the Atomic Energy Act. This requires congressional approval to make sure the agreements, they're called 123 agreements, meet these robust non-proliferation standards.
And the ideal commitment that the U.S. is always looking for is called the gold standard. It sounds like an abstract term, but the stakes couldn't be higher. What does that gold standard actually require?
It requires the country getting the tech to make two fundamental commitments. First, they can't enrich uranium. And second, they can't reprocess spent nuclear fuel. These are the nuclear red lines. Enriching uranium and reprocessing spent fuel are the two main technical pathways to producing bomb-grade fissile material. So if a country agrees to the gold standard, they're essentially signaling they intend to use the technology for, purely civilian power. Nothing else.
Okay, that context makes Saudi Arabia's stance even more alarming. During the Obama administration, they already refused to agree to this. But under the Trump administration, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, he escalated the rhetoric dramatically. He publicly proclaimed, this is a quote, "Without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible."
That is a stark, unambiguous proliferation threat. And it's coming directly from the top leadership. You're talking about triggering a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. And despite that alarming statement, the pressure from certain commercial interests to drop the gold standard to make a lesser deal, it was immense. They wanted to seal these lucrative contracts. National security be damned, basically.
And it wasn't just liberal opponents raising the alarm on this. We saw strong, deep bipartisan resistance to abandoning that standard. Even 5 prominent Republican senators at the time, we're talking Rubio, Young, Gardner, Paul, and Heller, they wrote a letter stressing the absolute necessity of the gold standard. They pointed out that if the U.S. was pressing Iran to stop enrichment, then it was, quote, critical and necessary for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to accept and uphold this gold standard. The government was clearly divided on this, yet one group saw an opening to influence the White House directly.
And this is where we introduce the corporate architects, the ones who were actively trying to crush that bipartisan resistance and redefine the gold standard as just a hindrance. The key player was a company called IP3 International, a relatively new private company, but they quickly assembled a consortium of established U.S. nuclear firms. All of them were determined to secure this multi-billion-dollar contract to build nuclear power plants across Saudi Arabia.
So how did they approach the administration? They didn't see non-proliferation as a national security mandate. They framed it as, what, a commercial problem?
Exactly, a commercial problem. IP3 repeatedly pressed the administration to abandon the gold standard, viewing it purely through a financial lens. In their own internal documents, they called the standard an obstacle, a total roadblock. They said it killed our leverage in negotiating these massive Saudi contracts. It's chilling. They're admitting that the very policy designed to ensure U.S. safety was the thing stopping them from making money.
What's fascinating here is just the unprecedented level of access these private interests got. Documents show IP3 described the Trump administration, astonishingly, as an extended team member. This wasn't arm's-length lobbying. This was a direct partnership.
It truly was. Just consider the access. IP3 officials met directly with President Trump himself. They met with key figures like Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, and critically, they met with pretty much the entire national security leadership. You've got a private consortium briefing, Energy Secretary Rick Perry, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin.
Secretaries of State Tillerson and Pompeo, right?
Yes, and Defense Secretary James Mattis, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, all of them.
That level of comprehensive cabinet access for a single private corporate deal is almost unheard of for non-government officials. And that access, as the sources clearly show, was heavily facilitated by one man, Thomas J. Barrack Jr.
Barrack was the ultimate connector. He was Trump's longtime friend, a huge donor, and the chairman of the Presidential Inaugural Committee. He leveraged his close personal relationship with the president while at the same time advancing U.S. corporate interests, advocating for foreign interests, specifically Saudi and Emirati. And he was actively seeking powerful administration roles for himself, like special envoy to the Middle East or ambassador to the UAE.
That mix of roles, friend, donor, corporate advocate, and job seeker. That is the very definition of a conflict of interest, isn't it? He was pitching a foreign nation's agenda while hoping for a major diplomatic post funded by the U.S. taxpayer.
It's a remarkable study in the intersection of private ambition and public policy. And the biggest prize he and IP3 were targeting involved the last major American manufacturer of large-scale nuclear reactors, the Westinghouse Electric Company, which was facing bankruptcy.
So tell us about the acquisition plan, the Westinghouse plan, because it was specifically designed to be legally tricky to bypass scrutiny.
They called it the Middle East Marshall Plan. So Barrack and IP3, they came up with a strategy to purchase Westinghouse. They were going to use what the documents describe as significant Saudi and Emirati capital. But the key legal hurdle they faced was the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS.
Okay, so for anyone listening who hasn't encountered CFIUS before, what is its role? And why did Barrack and IP3 need to worry about it?
CFIUS is an interagency committee. Its job is to review foreign takeovers of U.S. companies for national security risks. Since Westinghouse is the sole American manufacturer of these sensitive high-risk reactors, any foreign takeover would immediately trigger intense CFIUS scrutiny. But Barrack and IP3, they had a workaround. They planned to maintain 51% U.S. ownership.
Ah, the magic number. So by keeping that 51%, they could argue the company was still U.S. controlled. This would allow the deal to potentially bypass or at least get approval on an accelerated basis and avoid a long, deep dive into the foreign capital sources. So they used U.S. corporate structure as a shield for foreign investment in sensitive tech. That's clever, if deeply alarming.
It is, and the documentation shows just how coordinated this whole effort was right across the campaign and transition periods. Take the infamous May 2016 energy speech draft. Barrack shared that draft with a UAE businessman, Rashid Al-Malik, who was reportedly linked to UAE intelligence. And he shared it specifically to coordinate pro-Gulf language. Al-Malik sent suggestions back, and Barrack then passed them on to the campaign chairman, Paul Manafort.
So they were coordinating official policy language before the candidate even won. And then the transition period hits, and they quickly try to monetize their access.
Exactly. In December 2016, right after the election, IP3 travels to Saudi Arabia to solicit a $120 million investment from MBS for a 10% stake in their company. And as part of their sales pitch, they actively highlighted the emphatically positive support for their plan from the incoming National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, and from the president-elect himself. They used their direct White House access as a commodity to raise capital abroad.
And this wasn't just a transition issue. It went right into the administration. In August 2017, IP3 officials met with Jared Kushner. They briefed him on the Westinghouse plan, complete with a suggested capitalization chart, a chart showing a substantial 30% foreign-owned equity stake coming from a strategic sovereign fund and other foreign partners.
And Krishna reportedly expressed that he planned to convene senior-level interagency meetings specifically to discuss this proposal.
Which suggests this whole effort was fully sanctioned at the highest levels, operating outside the normal, State Department or Energy Department policy review channels.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. This high-level political influence was met with absolute skepticism by the actual nuclear industry professionals. The documents show other nuclear executives had serious concerns. They didn't buy the hype at all. They called the IP3 effort a boondoggle. They said their reputation was questionable. And in one particularly devastating assessment, they labeled IP3 the Theranos of the nuclear industry.
That phrase, it speaks volumes. For anyone who remembers the Theranos scandal, that analogy means they were seen as having zero substance or credible tech beneath this polished political presentation. These external critics pointed out undeniable practical problems. Saudi Arabia just lacked the necessary infrastructure. U.S. companies lacked the financial ability to take on the liability. And most fundamentally, the necessary bilateral 123 agreement, the very thing IP3 was lobbying to weaken, still wasn't in place.
That disconnect between the political enthusiasm fueled by powerful friends and the hard policy and technical realities, it just shows how much private interest was allowed to override traditional government due diligence.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this first wave of transactional diplomacy was all about corporate entities trying to sell sensitive nuclear secrets for basically short-term corporate cash, hoping to dismantle the gold standard.
Okay, so let's pivot and look at how this highly personalized transactional style is playing out in modern high-profile diplomacy. We can fast forward to a pretty remarkable snapshot from November 2025, the White House dinner hosted by President Trump for MBS.
That dinner perfectly encapsulates the current transactional approach, where diplomacy is mixed seamlessly with celebrity and commerce. Trump publicly called Saudi Arabia a major ally and said he expected more weapons trade. But you just have to look at the guest list.
Right. It wasn't just diplomats and military brass. It included major business leaders. We're talking Tesla CEO Elon Musk, Apple CEO Tim Cook, and crucially, the FIFA president Gianni Infantino was there.
That specific mix, global tech titans and the president of global soccer, that is the strategic core of MBS's modern soft power push. Saudi Arabia is heavily investing in Vision 2030, which requires them to diversify their economy into tech, tourism, and especially global sports legitimacy. So having the CEOs of the world's most valuable companies and the head of FIFA at the White House dinner with the Crown Prince, well, it links Saudi Arabia directly to future prosperity and global legitimacy.
And the most prominent Saudi soft power asset there was, of course, Cristiano Ronaldo. He attended as part of the Saudi delegation. He plays for Al Nassr and serves as a highly paid Saudi ambassador. This is the new pinnacle of celebrity diplomacy, not just meeting, but dining at the White House as part of a foreign delegation.
And the exchanges were so personalized. It just reinforces the transactional bond between the two men. Ronaldo had recently told Piers Morgan that Trump is one of the guys who can help change the world. Trump's response? He mentioned his son, Barron, is a big fan, and that meeting Ronaldo made Barron respect his father just a little bit more now.
Right.
It was a purely personal, highly visible public relations victory for both sides.
And the significance of Ronaldo's presence in the U.S. takes on a bit more weight when you consider his past. This was one of his first high-profile visits to the U.S. since 2017. He had previously avoided travel here because of a 2009 sexual assault allegation in Las Vegas.
Right. And while prosecutors declined to press charges back in 2019 due to insufficient evidence, the mere presence of that legal history had made U.S. travel risky. Now he's set to play in the upcoming 2026 World Cup, hosted in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, with a warm-up match scheduled for March 2026. His appearance at the White House, facilitated by his Saudi role, it serves multiple purposes. It's Saudi soft power in action, and it's a very visible statement about his security and freedom of movement. It's effectively signaling high-level U.S. acceptance and normalization right before these major sporting events take place on American soil.
So if we connect all this back to the earlier nuclear concerns, it seems the administration's focus remains overwhelmingly transactional. It's prioritizing massive deals and investment like MBS, promising $600 billion in U.S. investments over addressing governance issues.
Precisely. And this continuity is key. Whether it was downplaying the significance of the Khashoggi murder in the past to protect arms deals, or minimizing current human rights issues, the economic bottom line tends to outweigh the governance concerns.
The America First framework has prioritized freeing Americans detained abroad, which, they've had success with. But that focus has been criticized for not extending to others, like U.S. citizens held on travel bans, such as the 75-year-old U.S. citizen Saad al-Mahdi, or family members of Americans who remain unjustly detained. The transactional nature of the relationship seems to dictate who is protected and, well, who is not.
So to summarize the two key insights for you. First, U.S. policy towards Saudi Arabia has been subject to this extraordinary and successful influence by private parties. People like IP3 and Thomas Barrack, who were seeking to circumvent crucial nuclear non-proliferation standards, the gold standard, purely for financial gain. For a significant period, the line between corporate interest and national security policy was, well, it's virtually erased.
And second, this fundamentally transactional nature is still here today. The currency has expanded from, high-stakes nuclear bids to this modern celebrity and soft power diplomacy, leveraging major figures like Cristiano Ronaldo, Tim Cook, and Elon Musk to solidify that personal relationship between MBS and the U.S. administration. And it often eclipses human rights and governance issues entirely, all in favor of immediate economic or diplomatic wins.
Which raises an important and, I think, unnecessary question as we finish this deep dive. When financial and corporate lobbying efforts are so successful at overriding core national security standards like the gold standard, and when diplomacy becomes entirely based on personal relationships and celebrity endorsements, what stability is left in U.S. foreign policy?
You really have to ask yourself, what does that reliance on transactional politics mean for the long-term safety of the U.S., especially when the key players, the corporate architects and the foreign leaders, are actively signaling that they see our national security safeguards as just obstacles to be overcome? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.